This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Time to check in with Curtis Wilkerson from HawgSports.com, part of the 247 Sports Network. And most of the talk today on football, so let's talk about something that's a lot happier. Although the last four games hadn't that been great for Arkansas basketball. Curtis, how are you today?
Hey, I am doing fantastic, guys. I'm happy to be on with you.
You were there for the battle for Atlantis. Did not go the way that I think the team would have hoped. Beat Stanford, back-to-back losses against Memphis and North Carolina. What ails this team in your eyes right now, Curtis?
Well, I asked Eric Musselman that right after the loss to North Carolina, and he said there were too many things to get into at the moment. So, it really comes as no surprise that, an Arkansas team is having some growing pains, maybe coming a little bit earlier than it has in years past, but maybe that means they'll figure it out and get rolling a little bit earlier. I think a lot of us kind of felt like Arkansas might be ahead of schedule a little bit, after the preseason and some of those early games. But yeah, they've got some struggles that are creeping up right now. I think if you look on the defensive side of the ball, it's been 5 straight games where an opposing guard or wing has gone for over 20 points on them. It's hard to contain another team's best player, but Arkansas has kind of made a habit of doing that under Musselman. And so that's certainly something they have to figure out. The on-ball defense has been problematic, giving up too many drives. Opposing guards are able to get into the teeth of the defense way too often, and that collapses things and gets you all out of sorts and in scramble mode, and I think we've seen the effects of that. And then on the offensive end, just a little stagnant lately. I thought they were really moving the ball well and executing at a high level early in the season in the Bahamas. Maybe not as much purposeful movement. The shots weren't falling. The quality of the shots weren't there. So, a lot of things for this team to work on. Still early, no doubt they'll probably get it figured out. But, there's a pretty long list of things they got to get corrected.
Curtis, as far as the eye test, you were down there. You got to see him. When we played Memphis, I didn't see anybody. Jones was the best player I've seen. Now, I didn't get to see Villanova play, and I know they got some talent. Saw North Carolina play, but the kid from Memphis was pretty solid. As far as the eye test, do we look the part? Do we look as good as these other teams?
Not right now. No, I kind of felt a similar way watching some of those teams. I thought Villanova really, really stood out down there. They're just so physical and big. They're connected as a team. The way they play on both ends of the floor. I thought they kind of stood out above some of the other teams. I think Arkansas is probably equally or more talented than a lot of the groups that were down there, but it seems like some of those other teams are playing with a little bit more togetherness right now. And the other thing I noticed, Arkansas, listen, they're long, they're athletic, but in terms of physical size and strength and broad shoulders, maybe they're a step behind the Villanovas and the North Carolinas right now. And that doesn't necessarily make those teams better. It's just something that I noticed from a physicality standpoint. That's something that Muss has talked about a lot earlier in the year. Some of those other teams have a lot more beef than Arkansas does. They kind of have to find a way to counteract that.
Is Duke one of those teams too? Filipowski's a real 7-footer. Mark Mitchell's a real power forward. They got other 7-footers on the bench if they need it. And right now, how? I guess there really isn't an answer to this question, because part of the question is, was he going to be a better defender and rebounder? But man, I really feel like this team needed Jalen Graham to be that kind of player against the kind of teams that they just faced. It's just, you know what it's like with a bulky back. You just never know when it's going to go out on you. And it sounds like, that's a huge problem for him and for this team right now.
I agree with that 100%. All summer, the hype about Jalen Graham was real. The staff raved about him, to media and interviews. And they really propped him up in front of the team just for the way that he completely flipped the switch, changed his practice habits. He was working harder. He was more of a communicator. And he had really made some strides. They had every intention of him being a huge piece to the puzzle in the front court for this group. And you're right, man, back problems, that's never fun because they can be recurring. They can creep back up on you. You think you turned a corner, and then one slight movement the wrong way, and it flares back up. And especially you add into the fact that Jalen Graham is 6'10", 225 pounds or whatever, that complicates matters even more. And so I think getting him healthy is really, really important. You've got just a mix of guys right now at that center spot, but nobody's really taken hold of it. Mekhi Mitchell, he's inconsistent. He can be great one game. He can be in foul trouble 30 seconds into another one. I think Chandler Lawson's done a pretty bang-up job at that spot with the minutes that he's gotten. But Jalen Graham just brings something different. He's a guy that you can throw the ball to down on the block or in the high post, let him face up and go to work and serve as a scoring threat for you. And that opens things up for the guards as well. It's just a different look and a different dynamic that puts pressure on the defense that Arkansas doesn't really have at that spot right now. So I agree. They really, really could have used him. When you're playing 3 games in a row like that, I think we saw against North Carolina in the second half that fatigue really played a factor. They need that depth and they need that different look, and Jalen Graham's a guy who could definitely provide it.
Yeah, you got to be able to play team defense. We kind of seemed like we were a step behind, and Muss is doing a heck of a job coaching. You see him coaching them up when they would get beat or whatever. But one of the things I did see as a bright spot was number 6 blocker, and he reminds me of, if you remember, a guard named Josh Howard that played for Wake Forest and played in the NBA for a decade. Played for the Mavericks for a little bit, but that's who he kind of reminds me of, a scrappy guard that can do a little bit of everything and is only going to get better. What is his ceiling? What could you see his role defining to?
Yeah, I mean, he's really, really starting to emerge, and that's great. With him, I see another comp I could make is freshman year Devo Davis, a guy who wasn't playing much at the beginning of the season, but he kind of kept his head down, developed a reputation for, being a gritty, hard-nosed guy who would dive on the floor for loose balls and get after it on the defensive end. And then when his number was called, he translated that onto the floor in games, and his role just kept growing and growing and growing throughout the course of the season. And we're kind of seeing the same thing with Blocker. That's always been his thing. He's an explosive athlete, a great defender, and a guy who's fearless out there when it comes to getting after the boards and on loose balls. And he did that and stepped up and gave Arkansas some great minutes in the Bahamas. Now he's in the starting lineup. And I think we saw as the week progressed, he was getting more and more comfortable offensively. He's a guy who can really get downhill and attack above the rim. He can finish. He's got a physical frame. So, the continued emergence for him is going to be really interesting to see. Does he get comfortable in taking and knocking down some set three-pointers? I think that would keep teams from going under ball screens on him and make him more effective. He did a really good job of taking care of the basketball, but can he get the distribution going a little bit more and get those assist numbers up? Because they've been down for Arkansas. They need a point guard to really start to initiate things for them, and then continuing to just make an impact on the defensive end. I think he's, really starting to establish himself in the rotation, whether that's, starting point guard or, a guy coming off and giving him a different look and a spark off the bench. I don't know, but that's definitely one of the silver linings and the positive developments for this team. We've heard about that depth that they have, but we haven't necessarily seen it in the early goings. I think he's a guy who could really help you in that department.
Well, I think part of it is about, you need a point guard that's really going to run the offense and get guys to move around a little bit, and instead of the standing around, and it feels like that's where you are right now. You get Ellis coming off the bench, Blocker starting the last couple of games. I'm not sure if you feel confident about who your point guard is, because I see a team that's assisting on about 35% of their buckets, last in the SEC in assists, and that's not usually the way that we've seen Muss's teams operate.
Agreed. Yeah, that's really kind of flipped on its head here the last 3 or 4 games, and it's something that they definitely have to get corrected. I think they really need to get Ellis going, and whether that's as the team starting point guard, or if you take a little bit of pressure off of him and use him off the ball more. It's really hard to score 18 points per game in the ACC, and a guy like that didn't just forget how to play basketball overnight, although it kind of looked like it at times. In the Bahamas, he was scoreless in those 3 games, and this is a guy who was expected to really be a key part of the offense for this team. Doesn't look like he's playing with a lot of confidence right now. So definitely a guy that they need to get going. And the point guard position overall, I agree. Who's that going to be that really steps up, whether it's the point guard or anyone who can kind of step up and take command and leadership of that offense and get guys in the spots they need to be in and keep that ball moving and really facilitate things. I think For a while there, it looked like Devo Davis might be that guy, but he kind of took a downturn, 0 turnovers through 4 games, and then he had 9 in the 3 games in the Bahamas, and so kind of a backtrack there. Trevon Mark is a guy who's looked really, really good with the ball in his hands. Can he maybe have an uptick in the distribution? I don't know, but you're right. It has been pretty stagnant. They've got part of it is, they've got to screen and cut and set their man up with a little bit more sense of urgency and more purpose in terms of getting open. But, it all starts with the guy who's initiating the offense. And, that's definitely probably an area at the top of the priority list for them to figure out here moving forward.
Yeah, I wonder, is El healthy? Because I'm with you. I think he's going to have to be a big contributor, playing 25-plus minutes. I don't know if he's with the starting unit or where you're saying you see him fit, but I think he's going to have to be on the floor, and he's going to have to be on all cylinders for this team to be successful.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, he's healthy. I know he had a scare, I think, maybe it was before the opener. I don't know if he tweaked his knee or something, had to get an MRI, but it came back clean, and he's been involved in every game since then. I think some of it is they're looking for a little bit more from him defensively. We talked about defending the dribble drive and keeping your man in front. That's an area where he struggled some. And so they're looking for an uptick there. But, offensively, he's a guy that, struggles with some decision-making at times. He can get into the paint whenever he wants, but, making the right decisions in there is a work in progress. But he's wired to score, and that's been something that's always come naturally to him. So for him to go scoreless in 3 games like he did,
he never felt comfortable, Curtis. Like when I was watching, yeah,
that's exactly right. He didn't look comfortable, and he didn't look very confident out there. I don't know if it's a situation where other guys are starting to eat in those minutes, and maybe he's looking over his shoulder a little bit instead of focusing on the task at hand. Maybe it's a confidence deal there. I'm not sure, but. They've definitely got to get him going, because I do think for this team to reach its ultimate ceiling, he's got to be a guy who's a big piece of the puzzle for them.
Any knowledge at all on availability for Trevon Mark? Now, I mean, maybe I shouldn't ask that, because, it's really just going to be based on what you hear from Muss in the pregame presser leading up to the Duke game. It's just when I saw that, I'm like, goodness gracious, the kid's not moving. He's getting stretchered off. And now he's all right, but I can't imagine after that you'd be ready to go on a Wednesday.
Yeah, that's true. That was really scary. That happened right in front of us underneath that basket. And, boy, it didn't look good. I think, the good part of it, if that's even the appropriate term to use, was he kind of landed on his rear end there, and it was more back related than it was, head and neck. And I think that's what you're really scared about. But yeah, good news that the scans came back okay, and he was able to get released and travel back with the team. Man, I know how I feel just after kind of working some long days and going through that travel. I can't imagine what those guys feel after playing 3 games, and then especially Mark taking that nasty spill. So yeah, I think we talked to Muss here in about 5 minutes, and I think that'll probably be one of the first questions is, how's he feeling? How's he moving around? And then what's the plan for him the next few days? Is he feeling good enough to where they can get out there and get him moving around a little bit and see how he's feeling at practice in advance of Wednesday? Or is it a deal where he really needs some more rest and recovery? I have no idea what to expect there on the surface. I would kind of be surprised if he played on Wednesday, but maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity here in a few minutes.
Well, we'll let you go in just a moment, because the press conference will start soon. Before you go, though, you're in the Bahamas for like 4 days. Did you eat any conch chowder? Did you get some seafood? Did you go see the big aquarium in Atlantis? Did you go down the water? What'd you do there outside of basketball? Because it can't just be basketball
Recording
there.
in progress.
It was really all of the above. It was awesome. Yeah, had the conch fritters were incredible. Had the what was it called? The Junkamoon salad, which was the conch. Yeah, it was so good with the fruit medley and the herbs and spices. Had a lobster quesadilla that was unreal. I'm a big foodie, so anything from that standpoint was awesome for me. And yeah, that aquarium, there on the Atlantis Resort was unreal. Just fun to just kind of sit there and watch the fish roam around a little bit. And yeah, we got over to Cabbage Beach, which is a little bit off the beaten path, but it's just beautiful. The sand and the water down there. Maybe you'd like to be, home and around family for Thanksgiving, but there's a lot worse places to be than a place called Paradise Island. When basketball wasn't going on, really took advantage of that. It was just an incredible experience.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.